Okay, hello everyone. This week we're going to do emotional intelligence, and this is just something that I kind of became aware about because of my mom. She just kind of talked about the importance of emotional intelligence in the workplace, and I just feel like it's definitely something that I want to work on in my daily life. And then from doing research, it's absolutely something that a lot of people are currently dealing with because of reasons that will unfold. We'll just kind of explain it later. So, emotional intelligence is also known as emotional quotient or EQ or EI. And it's a theory that was introduced in the 1990s by John D. Mayer and developed later by Daniel Goleman. So basically, what it is just like the ability to identify and manage your emotions and the emotions of others around you. So just kind of having like that awareness and then harnessing your emotions and like apply them in like a mature, rational way and just like managing it and regulating it. So
one example that I found in an article I was reading of emotional intelligence is the guy who wrote this article was sitting in an airport and his flight was delayed for a few hours. There was for plane maintenance. And he said that this man in the airport who was supposed to be on the flight started yelling at the lady. I don't know what they're called. The woman who works for the airline who's in the airport. And he's yelling at her, like unleashing all of his anger at her, even though it is not her fault, not in her control. She can do nothing about this. And he kind of used that as an example of emotional intelligence because he was angry that his flight was delayed too, but he understood, like, while my anger is valid, she can't do anything about this. She can't change any of this. And so it's kind of that self-awareness of what your emotions are and then the ability to control them and use them in a productive way versus yelling at the sweet lady who has done nothing to you. And as a server, previous server, I appreciated that a lot because not everyone has emotional intelligence and people yell at you all the time whenever it's I have no control over what was happening.
Yeah.
I feel like a big part of the emotional intelligence is totally having a self-awareness, a situational awareness, and like what to do with these situations, like what is an appropriate way to respond to something, what is something that maybe you should just keep to yourself. And like a lot of kind of different examples in life is just to have higher emotional intelligence is, go with the flow of things, have some understanding, have empathy in situations, be able to accept any criticisms that may come up. You don't immediately, like your first response shouldn't be, you're hot-headed, you're mad, you're angry at everybody. It's kind of having some little inner self-checks before you like act on something.
So I think, obviously like you need emotional intelligence to just like apply to a lot of aspects in your life. But I think one thing that I like kept reading about and was like important, or at least like I feel like is really important, is just like in the workplace. Because just in general, like you need it, right? Like you don't know what you're going to be dealing with. You're going to be like in like high stress situations, or like probably with people that you don't like really get along with or whatever. So I feel like emotional intelligence is important to have, but especially like as a leader in a workplace. So I came across this article that's called Utilizing Emotional Intelligence in the Workplace. And then it just like tells you kind of like what you can do, like become more self-aware, as you said, Jazz. So like pay attention to your emotions, and then like remember emotions are like fleeting. So like you might feel super mad about something, but okay, it's gonna pass. Like it's not forever. And then other things are like practice self-regulation, like think before making decisions. And then another one is like improve social skills, like listen to what others have to say, like work on your motivation, like focus on what you love about working and like try to maintain a positive attitude. So those are just like smaller things, right? That you can do in the workplace. But I mean, just in general, like I feel like that could just be applied to your daily life.
Yeah, I think a good thing to do is one, I think it's good to, whatever feeling comes up for you, recognize that feeling. And I think these are going to kind of sound silly, but like try and tap into, okay, what is my body experiencing whenever I feel this? Because your body is usually experiencing something whenever we feel things. That's why they're called feelings, which took me a really long time to learn about. And my mind was a little bit blown whenever I learned that is why they're called feelings. But so like, what is my body saying in this? What is my body feeling? What is this emotion trying to tell me? Okay, is there something I can do about this emotion, or is there something I can do about the situation that's causing me this emotion, or is this something that I need to kind of just like wait until this passes? Like y'all said, emotions are temporary. Don't make permanent decisions based off of your very temporary emotions. I tell my clients that all the time. I tell myself that on a daily basis.
Me too. It's something that I like need to learn so bad.
Well,
this is why I
so
wanted to do this
hard.
episode. It's like a pep talk, like
Right.
keep yourself together.
Keep yourself together. This is actually just for us. Y'all are just along for the ride, but
Yeah. I don't know. And then something else that I was reading about that Carly, you kind of mentioned earlier is just like how did the pandemic impact people's emotional intelligence? So you gave a good example about saying that even if you were super like emotionally intelligent before, just of all the stress that has happened in these past couple of years, like fear, loneliness, like just isolation,
Anxiety.
and just like anxiety, and just like the incredible amount of burnout that everybody feels, like it's just like collectively affected all our emotional intelligence. And then I was reading that that COVID basically like psychologically can cause symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. So
I wonder like in the way that since we have COVID now and it's this thing that we're fearful of, like even if our symptoms aren't horrible, I think, is it like just the fact that we're getting this thing that is like we're fearful of that kind of causes that like trauma response? Is that kind of what they're saying?
Yeah. I think what they're saying is just like, yeah, because it's something that we don't quite understand, because I mean, obviously it's like ever evolving, right? Like the new variants, and then, you know, like the CDC says one day like wear a mask, the other day it says like, okay, don't wear it. Like it's just kind of like
constant updates and changes.
Yeah.
What
And
do
so
we
then
do?
at that point, it's like, how are you not anxious? Like, how are you supposed to know what to believe? Like, apparently cloth masks aren't, you know, good enough anymore. Right. And so I think it's just like this anxiety that just like, like that just causes like you to kind of like snap. Right.
Well, and even like you said, Jazz, there's constant either updates or there's constant information about it. And so it's kind of like it's this threat that has been constantly present for 2 years. And so it's like that is if you're feeling threatened, like if your safety is feeling threatened, then that can kind of trigger like your trauma response, like your fight or freeze response easier, because that part of your brain is like over functioning. So I can understand. I mean, that has definitely explained a lot of why we're more anxious in the past couple of years. And yeah, just, I mean, we never really had to have a break from it, especially if you're watching the news on social media, working in the medical field, an essential worker, you know, any of those things.
Yeah. What was interesting about this particular article that we're obviously going to link below is that they were talking about like emotional intelligence, and then like the pandemic, and then just like the workplace, just like the mix of the three. And then how basically like, because like because you're already stressed out and like your emotional intelligence just like isn't there anymore, like people like just like naturally kind of fall into these like counterproductive behaviors. And it's like basically was saying that it's unrealistic to expect people like Carly.
Sorry, I was trying to scoop my chair and it just looked really funny on the video.
What was I saying? That it's basically like unrealistic to expect people to have like the same performance level. Like you cannot be people, I mean, you can't expect people to be working at full capacity when they're already stressed out by all these things happening in the world, right? So that that article went a lot into like the workplace and how like employers like need to be more understanding. Like, yes, it like this pandemic is like hurting the economy, et cetera, but like you need to be empathetic. Right. And then while I was reading this, I was like, I don't know, I was thinking about the Great Resignation or whatever, you know, how like a lot of people are quitting their jobs and like right now there's like 10 million jobs open. I was like, oh, is there like a correlation between like emotional intelligence and that? And basically, yeah, like I saw some other articles that are talking about, hold on, pause. You don't have to actually pause it, it's okay. I found this really good quote that kind of explains it. It says, "We're almost, dare I say, grieving the way that we've done business before. During the pandemic, executive policymakers and HR representatives are having to reimagine what efficiency looks like, what processes look like, and how to include emotional intelligence and empathy into those processes." And then it says, "We've heard time and time again that this new generation doesn't want to work, and that's not the truth. Like we're just redefining the way that we work." And so basically like why people are quitting a lot is because, yeah, like stress, lack of emotional, like not lack of emotional intelligence, but maybe it's just like people are so burnt out.
Right, lack of emotional support.
Yeah.
And it's hard to even up the support because everyone is really stressed.
I feel like, yeah, I remember, I can't exactly recall where I was seeing this, but I was talking about that with like the amount of people quitting jobs. And I was like, okay, well, if everyone's hiring, like, why aren't people finding jobs? And a big thing was like, okay, one, yeah, we are in a pandemic, but two, it's like, okay, the people who are trying to hire people, it was like very low wage, like either little to no health insurance. And people are like, I'd rather stay home and like be okay than like risk my life for like barely minimum wage, like no sick leave, no, just like a bunch of things where it's like, I feel like a lot of jobs are like, no one wants to work for us. And it's like, well, why is that though? Like, think about what do you have to offer for employees? And yeah, like you're saying, it's like there's a lot of adjustments that are being made during these times. It's kind of, it's different times. We're all trying to learn what to do. And yeah, I feel like having such immense nonstop stress has definitely affected everyone's emotional intelligence levels and how to react to things and what we should do. And I think the big thing is like, we're not really going to have a lot of the answers right now. Like we're all trying to just figure things out.
Yeah, I think we're going to be seeing the effects of all of this for generations to come. And we don't even really know what those are yet.
That's so crazy to think about.
Right? Like, I mean, even same with the kids, like all the kids that weren't in school for a year, like the impacts of that, like we're not going to know about for.
Oh, you know what my sister told me? She was saying that, think about the kids who probably like what, in kindergarten, first grade when the pandemic started. And so at this point, they're like in third grade. And because they didn't go to school, like, you know, like regularly, like have that experience, they're like not like up to where they should be.
Yeah.
In terms of like just like skills or like interaction or just, you know, like everything that you learn, because like first and second grade are so like important for your development as a kid.
Right.
And so I think basically she was saying that there's going to be a huge need for like teachers and like empathetic teachers to like help these kids like get up to speed basically. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to see like in the future. Or however long this pandemic lasts.
Right. It's hard to even imagine.
That's a good point that you brought up with like the younger kids, where it's like being like really young in school, it's not even just about the education, it's also the like social aspect of You're learning how to cooperate with other people. You're learning how to deal with the different personalities and how do you approach those personalities and how do you deal with someone that maybe you don't like as much. And I feel like when I was like young like that, it was like, this is how we share and this is how we do this and this. And it's like being online school or whatever the new schooling is, like that whole part is missing. Or even something as simple as recess, like having that developmental of like, you learn things you like and don't like, and just
You're
like
active.
other skills that aren't just educational things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like socializing for sure.
Yeah, and even being away from mom, dad, grandparent, guardian, whoever it is. Because I think in the pandemic, I mean, not that it's not great to spend times with your kids, but it's also they need to understand that it's going to be okay whenever you're not with them and that you'll be back. You know what I mean? Like that reunification is really important. And so they're not used to not being with the person who they feel like is safe. And so it's harder for them to want to explore because it's kind of creating more anxiety around like being away from mom and dad or whoever is raising them.
Like, this is scary.
No.
On that note, Jazz, I have waited such a long time for you to tell me the rabbit hole you went down. Can we go down the rabbit hole now?
Yes. So the rabbit hole that I was going down. So I was immediately like, when I was looking into all of this, because this wasn't actually a term I've like heard of before. So when I was researching it and seeing examples, like the first thing I was thinking of was like smaller, where it's like, okay, friends, families, like coworkers, like we were talking about, like workplace environments, like schooling, like those environments. And then the more and more I was looking at examples, I was like, okay, I wonder if like criminals have lower emotional intelligence. And not to say that like all crime is like due to that, because I know there's like a lot of factors as far as different society things and things like that. I was kind of thinking of a specific type of criminal, but I don't want to get canceled, so I won't say. But I was like looking, and that's like, it's an actual total thing. So they had like did a study. This was like in India. And they did a study with 202 people, and they split it half and half. So 101 people were criminals. The other 101 was just normal people. And as far as the criminals that they were testing was people who did like murders, robberies, stuff like that. For both groups, they did make sure to exclude anybody who had any history of mental illness, psychiatric, physical illnesses, or vision or hearing impairments. And they did find that criminals do have lower emotional awareness. And how they kind of broke it down is they did kind of different questionnaires and stuff, but they were showing that they had low intrapersonal awareness, so of the self, interpersonal awareness, so of other people's emotions, managing emotions. And the big thing it came down to that I noticed in like a New York experiment that they were doing was that these criminals, because that they didn't care and regulate their own emotions or anything else, they didn't think about consequences. They didn't care about consequences. It meant nothing to them. They committed these crimes. Who cares? And they were interviewing somebody who had been released from jail. And he was just saying the time he spent in prison gave him that time to start dissecting his own emotions, to develop more emotional intelligence, and to be more aware of, okay, when I get out, these actions will have these consequences. If this happens, how do I choose to respond to it? And so I thought it was interesting because I was like, I wonder if there's some correlation just between certain types of criminals and doing these crimes and just having a complete lack of care, like as far as what happens to other people or even what happens to them, where they're just kind of like, who cares? It doesn't matter.
That is interesting. And I think it makes sense in the way that whenever we experience like emotional flooding, so meaning that like we're not just kind of like, oh man, I'm frustrated with, I'm trying to think of something silly. Like I'm frustrated that guy cut me off in traffic. Like, okay, I can tell I'm frustrated, but I'm not, like I can still have my own thoughts and everything, and I can kind of still regulate myself. Versus like if we're emotionally flooded, like we're having big intense emotions, our logical brain is totally offline. And so you don't have the ability to like think through consequences. You don't have the ability to think through like, is this actually going to achieve my goal, or is this going to land me in prison? And so I think it kind of makes sense that it's like, if you go into that emotional brain really quickly and you get really flooded and you have no emotional regulation, you're not thinking through those choices as much. And like you said, there's a whole bunch of factors for why people choose to do any kind of criminal activity. But I can understand that would actually make sense whenever you're thinking about like, you're just not thinking logically or rationally whenever your emotional brain is taking over. Nicole looks deep in thought.
I mean, I was just gonna say, this is going off on tangent, but you said like some of the criminals that were being looked at like had committed murders or whatever, but I feel like, I mean, this is a whole other topic that maybe we can explore later on, but I just feel like that, like, how do I say this? That is like correct. I just feel like, yeah, I mean, whatever. Everyone's gonna get canceled at some point.
Probably true.
Like if you commit murder, I feel like you have to have some sort of like mental illness.
Where you're just like not like the level of like action, like response makes no sense to the situation to be like, I will kill you. Or
Yeah.
it's like, why? Like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you just have to like, I don't know. I mean, you just have to, I don't know. Let's not go down this road right now.
Ooh, I can go down this road.
I mean, I want to, I really want to, but I don't know. I mean, this could just like morph into that if we want to. It's our podcast. I just feel like you just have to have some sort of like dissociation. Like, I don't know. Carly, explain.
I have a lot of thoughts. So I think one of my first thoughts though is that we separate ourselves a lot from people who commit heinous crimes like that. And I think the reality of the situation is that everyone is capable of doing something like that. And I know that that's kind of scary, but I think that the more we learn to accept that, I don't know. So, okay, how do I word this? People who have gone to war, who are in combat, I think a lot of times think like the rest of us who are like, well, it takes a certain type of person to be a murderer, and then they end up murdering someone. And that is part of where a lot of their shame comes from whenever they're, from their PTSD comes from the fact that I didn't think I was capable of this thing and now I've done it. And so there's like that disconnect. And so I think it's like all of our most basic function of our brain is survival. And if we think that we're being threatened, and granted, there's so many other factors that go into this, so I hope everyone's holding that with a grain of salt. But like, if we feel like we're threatened, all of us have a capability of doing things that I don't think that we understand that we have a capability of doing. And so I feel like there's a few things, like saying someone can have a mental illness can look like a lot of different things. So people can have depression, people can be narcissistic. Like there's not that that's two ends of the spectrum, but like there's a whole spectrum of mental illness. But I also I think we're more capable of things than we think that we are, I guess, is what I'm trying to say ultimately.
Well, when you put it that way, that makes a lot of sense. Like if you're trying to protect something that's like that you absolutely love, or someone that you absolutely love, and if I mean, I understand what you're saying. Like if it comes to protecting that person,
right?
For example, like of course you would do anything.
Right. But then you think about like, so if I'm protecting someone, what is my brain is understanding that there is a very real threat that I have to take care of. And my basic instinct is survive. And my basic instinct is to protect the people that I love. So we're rational with higher emotional intelligence. So that would probably only happen if someone was like actually breaking into our house, trying to hurt us or our child or our loved one or whatever, right? But I think that the difference is that whenever you've grown up, you have trauma, you have possibly a history of mental illness, that trigger of being threatened and feeling like your safety is threatened is much shorter. Like that fuse of feeling like your life is at stake is shorter. So I feel like you can feel like your safety is endangered even if it's not. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is that they can feel like that. And this is, I mean, I don't know. There's a whole lot of things. There's a whole lot of types of murderers, I think, too. But I guess that's just my thoughts right off the bat. I feel like this happens every time I talk.
I know. It's filled with so much knowledge.
It's like, okay, I don't know.
I'm just absorbing.
I also hate that I don't know how you guys feel, but I feel like, man, I have to like regulate myself and like really think about what I'm trying to say because I don't want it to come off the wrong way.
I know. Well, that's even how I even was thinking about that too. And it's like, okay, not that I'm defending murderers or like not, and I don't, it's like hard to even categorize it because it's like there's so many different examples, different types.
Yeah.
Like there's like murders of passion, but then there's like serial killers. Like, well, those are totally in different ends of the spectrum. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking like serial killers. Like, well, when I was saying that, like murders, I was literally thinking like serial killers. Like,
right.
I feel like at that point, you just have to like have
yes,
some
I would
sort
say
of
that there's a diagnosis
attachment.
there. Yeah. I would say that there's a diagnosis there. So emotional intelligence.
That's a lot to unpack. Well, it's weird because I feel like emotional intelligence as a whole seems like such a simple thing, but it can like show itself in so many different ways in life.
Yeah.
That's what like makes it more complex.
Yeah. So actually, if we want to like go a complete opposite way now, I was reading an article about emotional intelligence in relationships and how husbands that have, so this is this is heterosexual, like different sex relationships. So like a man and a wife, if the man has higher emotional intelligence, that leads to like having like a happier marriage because you're able to like have empathy for your wife, have understanding, be influenced by your wife. But it was interesting because same-sex couples have a way easier time with being influenced by each other by having that self-awareness, but then being able to like take those criticisms from one another. And so that kind of makes it you think that there's probably like a power dynamic in like heterosexual couples that makes like men not always like want to be emotionally intelligent and understanding and taking of criticism because they feel like then they have less power in the relationship. Because if it's like women or like man and man relationships, words are just so hard for me right now. Whatever. If it's a same-sex relationship, then it's the power is equal, right? Like across gender. But in heterosexual relationships, it wasn't found to be that way. And so this whole article was talking about like how to be more emotionally intelligent as a husband, because that improves the quality of your marriage.
So listen up, men.
Yeah.
Husbands.
Men, we're talking to you now. No, I'm just kidding. I feel like I'm calling everyone out today. I apologize.
Okay, that's interesting. Is that all that was in the article?
So we kind of just talked about like how to do that. And so taking influence was really like the biggest one. So, I mean, having empathy, having the self-awareness, but I think taking influence and he kind of tied that into emotional intelligence, just like how Jazz was talking about, like being able to take in criticism and kind of just grow from that. And so being able to kind of be influenced by each other as far as like finding compromises and like discussing problem solving without getting like hot-headed or maybe like letting that emotional part of your brain kind of take over. Which my thesis in grad school actually had to do with power dynamics. And one of the ways that you measure power in relationships is how easily you can take influence from each other. And so that kind of made sense, I guess, in my mind, that emotionally intelligent husbands, like high emotional intelligence husband, high, whatever that word is, have an easier time taking influence.
You should send over. Did you write a paper? Did you have to write a thesis paper?
I did, but you don't want to read it.
Oh, come on, just send it.
Oh, it's horrible. Oh, it's horrible.
You
I was brain dead
train.
whenever I wrote it. Like I couldn't form a sentence anymore.
That's your imposter talking.
Right, imposter syndrome.
No. I literally was at a point in grad school whenever I was writing my thesis, and one of the professors accidentally told us that we were supposed to write a paper that we weren't supposed to write, and it was like a 20-page paper, and I started crying because I like literally was bawling because I was like, I can't write anymore.
Class? Did you cry in class?
No, it was at home, luckily.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh my god.
I probably would have. Like I had no regulation to my emotions in that. I was flooded, let's just say.
I bet.
I wouldn't have blamed you, especially something like that big when you're already like stretched to the limits, you're putting in so much work, and then you like find out something was for nothing. You're like, okay, I see you.
All right.
I feel like at that point you'd be so stressed, you'd be so calm. Like, you know, when you reach that level of like anxiety or stress, like you can't do anything about it.
Yes. Whatever. I'm just like, all right, and I'm gonna go take a nap. That's usually what happens.
I still want to read your paper. I'm gonna get it one way or the other.
I will send it to you. Just please don't judge me.
No, I'm interested to read about it.
It is interesting. I like it, and I like power dynamics. I feel like it's interesting. I'd have to refresh myself on them.
What I feel like, I mean, just to listeners, and well, I don't know about you guys, but I definitely need to work on my emotional intelligence. Like, what are some things that you can do to work on that or get better at?
I feel like a big thing is like taking that step back just to assess the situation or assess what's going on, and just really like think about something before you act or react, and then have empathy for situations, have empathy for what's going on, have empathy for what someone else is dealing with, and with how you react, keep that in mind, just if you do react. But
yeah, and I would go ahead.
I mean, that's like rationally dealing with it, right? Like taking the time. But what if you're like emotionally flooded and you feel like you can't take a step back?
So whenever you're emotionally flooded, really the best thing to do is like grounding exercises, which is basically just trying to get your logical brain back online. So it's going to be things kind of like, I don't really know what this is called, but it's, I guess I call it like the 5 senses. But whenever you're emotionally flooded, point out 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Because whenever you're engaging all of your senses, that's bringing you back into a present moment, and your logical brain has an easier time coming back online. You can also do like deep breathing, and like breathing in for 4 seconds, holding it for 7 seconds, and then breathing out for 8 seconds, doing that a few times, because that will, like, we have this really important nerve that goes from our brain to our gut, and that's why we feel body sensations in our stomach a lot. And so that kind of calms that nerve down and takes you out of your like emotional brain and tells you like, oh, hey, I am safe and I can think through the situation now.
That's important to know.
Grounding is very important. Really, one of the things that I like to do is even like, okay, where are my feet? Like, I'm going to feel what my feet are feeling right now. Like, where's my butt? I'm going to feel what my butt is feeling. Like, just bringing yourself back into your body I think kind of helps too.
And it like takes your mind off of what it is that is overwhelming you and what you're thinking of when you just immediately give your mind something else to focus on, or even like have like a little mantra in your, or mantra, however you pronounce it, in your mind to just kind of review, or even kind of like intentions. I feel like a big thing for me this year was to be like, everything doesn't need a response. Like something or someone's bothering me, I don't even need to waste my energy.
Yeah. I like that one. I also think that like reminding ourselves that it's not personal, because like very, very rarely are things that happen to us actually personal attacks. Like very rarely. I think most of the time it has something more to do with like the person that's doing it. And so it's just reminding ourselves like, this is not about me. Like, this is not personal. Like taking a step back, breathing, understand what your body's telling you, understand what you're feeling.
Yeah, that is super important. Like that's definitely a good reminder, like that the way that someone is reacting to you, or not to you, but like that is like affecting you, it has nothing to do with you. Literally, it's like a projection of like how that person feels, like how they regulate their emotions.
Yeah, I like that saying, their reaction says more about them than it does about you. And it's like, yep, I can't control how they react. They can. They're choosing not to, whether biological or emotional choice.
This is tying back to what we talked about in the previous episode. Hey, didn't we talk about this?
Yes. Well, we talked about familial toxicity, which I can say now. Very exciting.
No, but I'm saying like if a person chooses to like work on themselves.
Yeah. Like that's on them, not on you, or what you choose to do is on you. And I think it's important to know that, in trying to gain more emotional intelligence and practicing these things, also give yourself grace and just know like you're not going to always respond perfectly. And it's going to be kind of a long-term thing on you also working on how you react to things, on how you deal with situations. So, if you right away are like, oh, I'm just too hot-headed, or I have low emotional intelligence, you'll get there. It's a skill. You'll work on it.
Right. And building it, like, I think just progress is really good. And so kind of taking that time to understand what your emotions are and know that they're valid. Like you're allowed to feel however you feel. And I think just kind of understanding them more so in yourself kind of gives you more of that control over them, because it's like, I don't know, it's like anytime we gather information about something, it doesn't seem as scary. You know what I mean? And so it's like, just figure out your own emotions, like figure out what's going on with you, journal or read, or, figure out what's kind of going on with you and then work from there.
Yeah. I feel like this episode was like so necessary for my own like personal growth. Like I need to go back to like writing or something.
Man, I know I tell so many of my clients to journal and I'm like, I should journal.
Yeah. I used to, when we first started college, I was like so good about it. I would literally do it every single day.
Wow. I have never done that.
Really?
I mean, I have but like not ever consistently.
I feel like it was just a really good outlet.
Oh, it's a great outlet. Like your thoughts and emotions seem so much less intimidating once you write them out. You're like, oh, that thought's stupid.
Yeah. And then
I don't agree with that.
Yeah. And then you just kind of like work through it, as you're writing. I feel like a good way to just kind of journal, which like randomly I was taught this in middle school. I think it was like a drama class. I can't remember what it was specifically, but it had something to do with theater. But it was just like she would make us journal for like the first 15 minutes of class and just write whatever comes out. Like don't even think about it twice. Like don't even look back, nothing. Like don't look back like 3 words. Like just get it all out. And then by the end, like, and after 15 minutes, like you feel so much better.
Man, theater class coming in clutch.
I don't practice it anymore, so.
We probably should.
I feel, I need to go back to writing. I don't know. Anything positive this week?
I need to start preparing this beforehand.
love how you guys look around like, oh.
Remember, like positivity. Oh, yes, positivity. I went to some hot springs the other day, and so it was relaxing, and it reminded me to, one, that I deserve to enjoy things. I feel like sometimes I'm just like hard on myself, and I'm like, you can't enjoy things because you have things to do. And just getting back to nature of just enjoying the simplicity of life and being outside and tuned out from everything.
Yeah.
So shout out to my friend Camille for inviting me.
Nice job, Camille. Yeah, I think getting back out in nature, I need to do that. I think I might try and do that more this week. That's a good one. What about you, Nicole? Anything positive?
I don't know. I asked this question and I can't think. Man. No.
That's just where we are today, folks.
I've just been like really stressed out by a lot of things, but
you should journal.
I know, right? I'm alive. That's a positive thing.
Yeah, hey, here we are. None of us have had COVID.
Sometimes getting out of bed is the only thing you need to accomplish that day, nothing else.
Right. I saw that meme the other day that's like, did you know you could just write anything on a to-do list? Be like, get out of bed, check. Took a shower, check. And it's like, man, look at me checking off so many things today.
What about you, Carly?
I might get to see my Nana this weekend. I'm really excited. Fingers crossed that everyone's healthy enough to do it. Because girl's 92, so I want to protect her little bod.
Nana blankets.
Yep. The best. Yeah, so I'm hopeful to see her this weekend. But I guess just and thanking everyone who's stuck with this episode this far, because this was a roller coaster. Loved it.
We always feel like that though for every episode.
That's true. Tangents should be our next podcast name.
Oh, absolutely. Just have a conversation and it goes wherever it goes.
Yep.
It's a hodgepodge of ideas. Mm-hmm. Free flowing. That's what it is. The free flowing.
Yeah. I like it. All right. See y'all next week.
Peace.